No, the man in 1A said, voice flat, eyes on his phone. I paid for this seat. The flight attendant froze. The cabin did too. The jetway was still attached, the door still open, and row after row of faces tilted toward the front. The woman with the soft-sided cooler hugged it closer to her stomach. Her hands shook. Sir, the attendant tried again, gentler. It's still business class, it's just 7C. We have an urgent request. It will help a medical courier reach the front. It will help the airline's mistake, the man said without looking up. 7C is not 1A. The woman with the cooler stepped into the aisle. She didn't look like a VIP. She looked like a teacher who had left school in a rush, hair pulled back, cardigan snagged at the cuff. She said, please. He glanced up. He saw the cooler. He didn't soften. What's in that? He asked. That's so important it needs my seat. The attendant opened her palm. Organ transport authorization, sir. Bone marrow. Time sensitive. A muscle jumped in his jaw. He still shook his head. Then the airline can plan better. Not my problem. The woman swallowed. It's for a child, she said. He's waiting right now. In Manila. My seat is in the back. If I'm not near the door, we miss the connection. He didn't blink. So sit in 2A or 3C or anywhere else near the front. Why mine? The attendant kept her voice level. Because 1A has direct aisle, extra stowage space, and a straight shot to the door. The courier needs every minute, please. The cooler's temperature sensor pulsed a calm green. The woman's breathing wasn't calm. She kept her eyes on the man's cufflinks and not his face. From 3D, a woman said, I can swap to 2A if it helps her get closer. From 4B, a businessman said, I'll move to 3C. Chain it, move everyone up. A plan tried to form. It ran into 1A like water into glass. The man in 1A leaned back. I have a knee that locks, he said. I choose 1A because I can extend it. I can't do a wall seat, not 2A, not 7C. This is why I pay full fare. The attendant nodded. I understand, we understand, but this is a child. The transplant window, another voice cut in. Is there really a child? Someone in row 5 asked it. It wasn't cruel, it was careful. The woman with the cooler held up a letter. From St. Luke's, she said. They called me this morning. They needed someone with a Philippine passport who could fly now, who already had a visa for Japan. It was me. I said yes. Who are you? The man in 1A said, as if asking a trick question. I'm a teacher, she said. Filipino, I teach in Abu Dhabi. I'm just passing through. I'm not anybody. The man's thumb hovered over his screen. The attendant added, Sir, we can show you the airline note. We logged her as medical courier. Then give her a front seat, not mine, he said. Solve it without punishing me. The attendant's radio crackled. The gate agent standing in the door poked his head in, eyebrows up. The cabin still watched. The woman with the cooler kept standing, shoulders square. Please, she said again. I have to get off first. My students pooled money for this ticket. They were supposed to take exams today. I told them I'd bring back points if I could. They wrapped the money in paper stars. Someone in row 6 swallowed audibly. Someone in 2C whispered, oh. When they held, the supervisor arrived. His smile was tired, practiced. Sir, we'll compensate you if you'll move. We'll arrange a car at the next connection. You'll lose nothing. Accept my seat, he said. The supervisor took a breath. Accept 1A. The man put his phone face down. No, silence stretched. The woman with the cooler didn't crumble. She anchored her feet. She said, if we don't make the Tokyo connection, the marrow expires. The child won't get another donor. He's 6. The whole cabin heard 6. They didn't hear Manila traffic. They didn't hear the 1,000 hands that had searched for a match. They heard 6. The man looked at his watch like it owed him a favor. Then planned time for delays. I'm not the delay. The supervisor pressed his lips together, then shifted. Ma'am, he said to the woman, we can get you to 2C. That's still near the door. We'll have a wheelchair meet you. The cabin will remain seated until, the man in 1A snorted. The cabin doesn't listen. The supervisor didn't meet his eyes. It will listen today, he said. The woman clutched the cooler closer. She nodded once. 2C is okay, she said. It didn't sound okay. It sounded like surrender. A flurry of people shifted. Bags moved, hands reached, seat belts clicked. The woman in 3D and the businessman in 4B made a path. 2C appeared. The cooler slid into the space under the seat like a sleeping animal. As she sank into 2C, a boy in row 8 peered over his armrest. Miss, he whispered, what's in the bag? The woman said softly, a gift. Like Christmas. Better, she said. Like life. The door closed. The jetway pulled away. The plane exhaled a deep rumble that rattled plastic cups. The man in 1A put his headphones on. If he felt the weight of 100 eyes, he didn't show it. Takeoff rolled. Clouds ate the windows. The cabin lights softened. For the first time since boarding, the woman let herself breathe. She dug out a folded piece of paper from her cardigan pocket. Crayon stars fell into her lap. Inside them, names in slanted writing. "From 7B, one said. "For the baby," said another. "Ma'am Mila, don't forget your snacks," someone had drawn with 3 exclamation points. She smiled at the paper. It was quick, small, fierce. The flight attendant leaned in. "May I see the courier instructions again, ma'am?" she asked. Mila handed over the letter and the laminated card in its plastic sleeve. The attendant skimmed it, nodded, and touched her shoulder, brief and careful. "We've put a note to the captain," she said. "He'll radio ahead." "Thank you," Mila said. She used Poe, quiet, reflexively. "Do you have the number to call on landing?" the attendant asked. Mila tapped her phone to show a message thread. At the top, St. Luke's Transplant Coord. Below, timestamps. "We're watching your flight," one said. "Tokyo Gate change E7 to H2. Running time 12:18 min, another said. "Ice packs good for 6 hours. You're okay." "Good," the attendant said. "We'll get you off first." From 1A, the man took off one ear cup. "Is this official?" he said. "Or one of those internet things where people claim?" The attendant's smile didn't crack. "Yes, sir, it's official." "Then why wasn't it planned?" he said. "Because a typhoon grounded the original courier in Cebu," Mila said simply. "They called 60 people. 49 said no, 9 couldn't get visas. 1 was stuck in traffic. It was me." He frowned. He wasn't used to things that weren't planned around him. He put his headphones back on. An hour ticked. The green dot on the cooler stayed steady. Drinks came, trays clicked, low laughter rolled. Every so often eyes slid to 2C, to the bag under the seat, to the hands resting on it. Mila didn't sip her juice. She watched the countdown on her phone like it was a living thing. 4 hours on the ice, 3 hours and 40, 3:30. She texted the coordinator. "How is he?" The reply, quiet. "Very tired. His mom keeps singing." Mila typed, "Tell her we're coming." She didn't add "won't fail." She didn't have to. The man in 1A shifted his knee. He pressed the button and reclined. He scrolled. People knew his face. Not because of movies, because of a magazine cover and a word, disruptor, printed under it. He had built an app that took middlemen out of markets. Today, he was the middleman. He didn't see it yet. Turbulence tapped the cabin. The seatbelt sign chimed. The crew paused in the aisle. A beeping cut through the hum. Heads turned. Eyes found the cooler. The green dot flickered. It turned amber. Mila's spine stiffened. "Excuse me," she said to the attendant, voice too even. It beeped. The attendant crouched. She drew back the zipper, careful not to expose, careful not to warm. Inside, a digital temp strip flashed 2.1C, 2.2C, 2.3C. The safe range ended at 4C. The amber was warning, not panic. Mila's throat was dry. "It was in their refrigerator until boarding," she said, as if that would steady the numbers. The attendant stood. "Galley ice," she said to her partner. "Right now." The partner ran. Plastic clinked. A bag appeared. "Can we put ice around the cooler?" The attendant asked. Mila nodded. "Not on the canister, around the bag." They did it fast and small, tight movements, not the flustered kind. The amber light simmered back to green. The cabin exhaled an inch. The captain chimed on. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical courier on board. We'll be giving priority on landing. Thank you for your cooperation." People smiled down and pretended to look at their movies. They were listening. The man in 1A kept his headphones on, but his eyes were not glass. He watched the ice bag go under the seat. He watched the hands that placed it, calloused fingers that looked more used to whiteboard markers than emergency. He blinked, then looked away. A child started to cry 2 rows back, not a baby, a little boy whose sobs pulled at the skin around the sound. "Mom, my ears, my ears." He banged his fist on the armrest. The mother flinched. "SHH, SHH." She didn't sound like she believed the SHH. Mila looked back once. She reached into her tote, pulled a lollipop out of a Ziploc. She held it up. "May I?" she said. The mother nodded like the question mattered too much. Mila took the boy's hand and pressed the lollipop into it. "This is magic," she whispered. "If you lick it like this, only like this, your ears will stop hurting." He looked at her like she had invented sugar. He licked it like this. After a moment, the sobs hiccuped into silence. "Salamat," the mother mouthed. Mila smiled. Her hand returned to the cooler. The man in 1A watched that too. He slid his jaw. He had a kid once, long ago, who cried on a plane. His nanny had handled it then. He had called his driver at landing. He had never picked up a lollipop. "Why you?" a woman across the aisle asked in a low tone. She had been quiet until now. "Why would a teacher do this?" Mila shifted. The green dot was back steady. She let herself answer. "Because someone from our barangay donated for my father when I was small," she said. "Not organ, blood, because somebody gave before he knew who it was for. Because my students think adults can keep promises. Because it was my day off and my hands were empty." She folded her fingers. "Not empty now." "What if you miss the connection?" the woman asked. "Then I'll find another way." She tilted her chin at her phone. "They told me there is no other way." The cabin took that in. It put it in a pocket. Time slowed, then sped, then sank. The green dot stayed green. People watched it like a votive. The man in 1A checked his watch again and again, not because he was late, but because someone else was. The captain came on. "We're starting our descent. We've coordinated with ground. We'll have a gate close to our connection. Please remain seated so a medical courier can exit quickly." Airlines said that kind of thing all the time. People usually stood anyway. Overhead bins popped. Jackets rustled. A baby wailed because the change in air felt like invisible knives. Someone's elbow banged a window. The man in 1A looked at the sign. He pressed his call button. The attendant leaned in. He didn't smile. "Can your captain get us a cart at the gate?" he asked, "and call the connection to wait 5 minutes." "We've requested both, sir," she said. "Tell them it's me," he said. "Use my name, say it's for me." The attendant blinked, then nodded. She didn't gush. She went to the phone. She spoke into it. The man's assistant in 1C was already typing. Thumbs blur, messages flew, lines moved. Somewhere on the ground, someone answered faster when they heard a last name with an outdoor mall named after it. The plane kissed the runway. Brakes bit, hearts squeezed. The seatbelt sign chimed off. Before a single overhead bin opened, row 5 stood, not to grab bags, to step back. Row 6 did the same. Row 7, a wave, controlled and specific, moved backward like choreography invented on the spot. "Everyone, please stay seated," the attendant said. She didn't need to. The aisle cleared by itself. The man in 1A stood and stepped into the aisle. He turned, not to block, but to hold back anyone who moved. He lifted his palm. "Let her through," he said. It wasn't loud. It was authority dressed down and pointed in a different direction for the first time that day. Mila stood, lifted the cooler, and hugged it like a second heartbeat. She looked at the aisle. It was clear. It was lined with people standing and pressed back into their seats, shoulders touching windows, hands against headrests, faces open in a way that didn't happen at 35,000 feet. As she started forward, the man in 1A stepped aside. He caught her eye. He didn't look like a magazine cover now. He looked like a person trying to undo something without words. "I was wrong," he said quietly. He put a hand on the bulkhead to steady himself. "Run." She didn't waste it on a speech. She nodded once. She ran. As she passed, the cabin did something it didn't do on planes. It clapped. It wasn't the "we landed" clap strangers sometimes sparked. It was deep, unashamed, urgent. It rose from the back, moved to the front, and wrapped her as she crossed the threshold. The flight attendants at the door clapped too. The captain clapped from the cockpit door, one hand only because the other held the checklist. On the jetway, a wheelchair waited, empty but needed for speed. A gate agent jogged beside her. "This way," he said. "They're holding H2, 3 minutes." She didn't sit. She ran next to the chair, hand on the back, elbow skimming plastic. Her lungs burned. The cooler bumped her thigh. The temp strip held green. Behind her on the plane, the clapping hadn't stopped when the door swung shut. It turned to murmurs, then softened. People sank back into seats with eyes wet and phones quiet. The man in 1A sat down slowly. He reached for his phone and didn't pick it up. He looked at the empty space where the cooler had been, a rectangle of carpet like any other. He pressed 2 fingers to his knee as if it hurt. Maybe it did. Maybe something else did. He said to his assistant, not loudly, "Send a donation." He didn't say an amount. The assistant nodded anyway. "Where to?" he asked. The man stared at the bulkhead where his reflection was a shadow. "The transplant fund and whatever school she teaches at. Scholarships." The assistant typed. He added something without being told, a note to attach his name only if asked. He looked up. "Sir," he said. "She said students pooled money." "Do we want?" "Yes," the man said. "All of it." Someone in row 4 turned. That was decent, he said. It wasn't praise, it was a marker in a ledger that had been off balance. It was late, the man said. The plane waited. The captain came on. Folks, thank you for your patience and your help. His voice had changed. It had that tone people got when they remembered what their job could be. We'll begin deplaning now. People stood. They didn't rush. They moved like they had been given a script that made them do the right thing without being heroic. On the ground, Mila made the connection. The cart flew. A security door opened like a miracle disguised as a badge swipe. A person in a lab coat took the cooler like it was a baby and a bomb, both at once, with reverence and speed. You made it, the coordinator said, breathless. You made it. Mila's chest ached. Is he ready? She asked. They're prepping, the coordinator said. His mom hasn't slept. She looked at Mila like she should have collapsed but hadn't. What's your name? She asked. Mila, she said. Thank you, Mila, the coordinator said. You saved him minutes. People on a plane did, Mila said. Not me. 2 gates away, a board flipped from final call to closed. At H2, it stayed final call until Mila vanished down the jetway, then flipped to boarding for a few seconds more, long enough for the plane to join its 80% attendance and the child at the end of the line to keep breathing. She delivered the cooler. She signed a form. She stood in a fluorescent hallway and watched a door close behind which people moved like weather, precise and unstoppable. She sat down on a bench. She finally cried. On the first flight, phones buzzed. A stranger in 10A had filmed nothing but the floor, but his caption said, "We clapped for a teacher." It got shared anyway. 2 days later, when the plane's passengers had returned to work and screens and small complaints, an email reached the airline. It was from the hospital, the subject line, update. Inside, a photo. A little boy hooked to lines, eyes open, a cloth over his forehead with cartoon fish on it. He lifted a thumb weakly. His mother's hand held his. The caption read, Salamat. The airline sent it to the crew. The crew sent it to a handful of passengers who had left their addresses. It didn't go viral. It didn't need to. It reached who it had to. In a classroom in Abu Dhabi, a swarm of 7th graders crowded around a phone. Their teacher showed them the picture. We did it, one said. Another poked the screen. Is that the baby? A third tugged a sleeve. Ma'am, our stars worked. They did, Mila said. She put the phone down and wiped her eyes with the back of her hand like she had dust in them. She reached into her bag and pulled out 47 paper stars, edges crumpled, colors mismatched. She held them up. Across the ocean, the man who had said no watched the same photo alone in a quiet kitchen. He didn't share it. He let it turn something that had stuck. At an airport months later, a gate agent would tell a story in the break room. We had this flight, she'd say. The whole plane stayed back. They clapped. Not for a VIP, for a teacher with a cooler. What was in it? Someone would ask. Hope, she'd say, and roll her eyes at herself, but she wouldn't take it back. On that first flight, before any of that, as the door had closed and the clapping had echoed down the jetway, the man in 1A had taken a breath like he hadn't been breathing all day. He had looked at the empty aisle and at the place where the woman had stood, small and unbending, and he had said under the hum of the air and the click of the belts, a word he didn't use easily. Sorry. No one heard it. It still mattered.